And there it is, right on time.
What? Ghostwriter, multiple books, plus I already read some of this one.
Right.
Holy moly, I got some questions for you with 2020. J.R. Strayve Jr. today on the show. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
The Business Bros Podcast was created for you. Learn from the business professionals who come to share their stories. Find out what's working in business, on social media, what's hot and what's not, straight from the mouths of successful entrepreneurs out there doing the real work. And now, welcome to another episode of
Business Bros. Dude,
what up?
Like,
what
super
up?
in sync on that one.
See, on your side it sounds good. On my side it's off, but it doesn't matter. It's the internet. We have fun with it anyways.
It works.
Fire intro.
So here we go again. It is a beautiful, sunny, welcome back Wednesday here on the Business Bros Pod. And we're excited to say welcome back to an incredibly gifted author and advisor. Today's welcome back guest was on the show 11 months ago to the day. At the time, he was telling us about his book, First Spouse. Now he's got some more exciting stories to tell. This needs no fanfare. We're so excited to have him back on the show from Westpac Wealth Partners and here to talk about his two new books. Plus, welcome back to the podcast, Jerry Strayve.
Oh, I've messed that up, Ham. I wasn't even ready.
You killed
I'm gonna throw it on there. I'm gonna throw it on there anyway. I was looking at his book. I was looking at his book, and I didn't do the applause. Sorry about that.
That was from when I was at Carnegie Hall.
That was when you were at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah. I don't know how you found it. It's been a while. Black and white.
Everything's on YouTube these days. That's how we roll. All right, Mrs. Strayve, I was reading some of your book today, trying to get caught up, and remembering the last conversation we had. And spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read the book, Nick Jeffries is a Republican, correct?
Right.
And he wins California?
Can you believe it?
It
It was like days of Reagan, right?
was amazing.
If you guys aren't old enough to remember.
No, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, I think that's the last Republican that took the governor's seat here in Cali.
Yeah,
I don't
no.
know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know. Not with the Republican we currently have. I don't think he's taking California.
It's a mixed bag, right?
You'd think he'd have a chance at New York, though, but I don't know about California.
Yeah, well, it's going to be what it's going to be. We're going to probably find out by January who's president, but
That's gonna take. We got mail-in ballots. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be some crazy stuff. So this book had a lot to do with things going on in 2020, and 2020 took a huge left turn from what anybody thought it was going to be like. What's your take on being an author and kind of going into a fictional state and yet kind of living a fictional world? How does that relate?
Like that book, First Spouse, the United States, and other ones, they're kind of like a dystopia. You're writing in parallel lines, what's going on, and trying to kind of weave in there. But who would have ever imagined this COVID thing would have come along and just wipe everything out? So there are going to be a lot of authors that come out with the COVID books and things related to it and what have you. But you know what? I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be I'm not going to be that interested in reliving COVID right away as soon as it's over. So we'll see how that happens.
We've been stuck in this place for a while now. I mean, I'll be honest though, it's been some of the greatest quality time I've had in quite some time. The world got to slow down, spend more time with my kids, spend more time with my wife. I know out there's a lot of people whose relationships have improved or completely diminished, right? It's been one or the other. You realize real quick, like, okay, I really like, what is that? I really like, Kelly has a real chunk that's pro-red. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, it does have good chunks of pro red, but it's mostly blue. Let's face it. So I mean,
you're talking about the COVID thing as an author, and so many of the authors that I know, it doesn't change our life a whole lot because when you're writing, it's a pretty lonely experience, and it really didn't change my life a great deal, other than the fact that I can't go out to bars and meet my friends and that kind of thing. but it hasn't made a big difference. And so,
but you had more time, right? You had more time in what you're doing. And I don't know about you, like, I'm not an author, but when COVID first hit, I sat down and wrote my entire process on how we do our podcasting. And I have an ebook. I made an ebook out of that time, right? So, that time has allowed a lot of people to branch out and create new hobbies or create new side hustles or whatever it's going to be. You must have used that time wisely because you came out with a couple things.
Yeah, I since I spoke with you, I have come out with 2 books. One of them I was writing, or had written a lot of it, Braxton's Century Volume 1. And Braxton's Century turned into a trilogy, believe it or not. When I was talking with you last, my next book was going to be 1 book, but I guess I've been doing a little bit of writing because now it's 3. And then I also wrote a short story that I published yesterday on Amazon. I just put it up there. It's about a 25-page story. And then I was contracted with a film company to write a book that's going to be made into a film. I'm a ghostwriter on that book.
What was that like? I mean, being able to write something and not getting like the full credit for a lot of the work you did, but having them take it and kind of turn it into their own. I mean, it's almost like, check out this beautiful cake I made, and then somebody comes and like drops all kinds of, whipped cream and sprinkles and all kinds of stuff on your cake. What was that experience like?
Well, it's kind of interesting. The best part about it was they paid me.
Well, that's a plus. I'm going to go with that's a winner right there. You want to drop cherries on top? Go ahead. You pay
the
for
cherries
it.
on the top, right? So as an author, you don't get paid until the books sell. Well, hell, I've got paid, and we'll see if the book sells. So what they do is they have what they call project specifications. I'm going to hold that up for you. You can see that I have taken a few notes on it.
Yeah.
And this thing is really long, and they tell you basically the thrust of the story. Like, they tell you when the time period is, they tell you who the characters are, the age they are, what they're looking for in the book, and then it's kind of an outline where they want to go. But then they give you a carte blanche to do anything that you want with it, which is interesting because I would go page by page, changing things, adjusting things, trying to go along a pattern. But when you take 30 pages and turn it into 300 pages, you're going to have an imprint on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but still, like, I mean, they give you a box and they tell you do whatever you want with this box. That still opens up a lot.
We better like it when you're done.
Yeah, but we better like it when you're done. But I mean, that gives you a lot of creativity. So you know who the character is, you know where their time frame is, you know a couple things about them, but you get to create their backstory. It still allows for a lot of flexibility.
And that was fun. In fact, in this story, it's about a gal by the name of Edith Cavell, and this takes place in 1914 during World War I in Brussels. She's an English person, middle-aged woman that runs a hospital in Brussels, and the Germans occupy it, and she smuggles 200 Allied soldiers out of the hospital during the German occupation. So when I went and talked to them, I said, do you want a James Bond adventure here, or do you want a Casablanca type of thing? And they said, Casablanca. So I thought a lot of that in those moods and those things that are going on. And I have, tunnels and all this, escape routes and shit. The Brussels is, littered with beautiful buildings and chateaus, and also with some horrible back streets. And so I played into all of that. So it's kind of a bête noire book, if you will. And it'd be interesting to see what they do with it as a film.
So I just finished watching on Amazon Prime. They have this show called The Man in Hightower. Have you watched that?
No, I've not watched it. I saw it. I haven't done that yet.
So I was surprised. Jeff Redondo
how many seasons
referred it to me. It's 4 seasons, right? He referred it to me. He's like, "Look,
and you
it's pretty interesting." The wife loved it, so she was there on board. We were watching an episode or 2 a day, it's set in World War II time. The premise is, what happens if the Nazis and Japan won the war, right? What would happen to the rest?
2 episodes of that.
Yeah, and just the trippiness to see that Nazi emblem on like half of the United States, the Japanese flag on the other part of the United States, and you have this like middle neutral zone of what remains of America. Like it was crazy, and it takes a very sci-fi-ish turn, right? And as you're explaining this whole 1914 scenario, and given this box, it kind of makes me wonder, like when you have an outline like that, and you're giving some of these criteria, I can imagine somebody got an outline for this show and said, look, this is what we're looking to do. Yeah, Jeff, it was awesome, by the way. This is what we're looking to do, and this is what we're looking to get done. And then someone like you sits down and says, all right, that's cool, and starts writing like, what if I went in this direction? And you just like,
I did that. I had a conflict with the company because they wanted Nurse Covell's home to be a house outside of the hospital. Well, back in the early 1900s, when you were at a hospital, you lived there, particularly if you ran it, and the nurses lived upstairs in the garrets and what have you. And there was so much going on, action going on. I thought it would unnecessarily complicate the story and take you out of the story. You had a lot of the action not taking place in the hospital, just work more. And I did the research and found out she did, in fact, have her apartment in the hospital with a garden. And I use that garden and all that kind of stuff for neat stuff to happen. But I had to fight that. That's one of the things that I just had to take. I said, this just doesn't work right, what you're asking.
So this is based on a story then?
True. It's a true story.
Oh, so that kind of limits it. That limits it even more, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, I did kind of spice it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, middle-aged woman in real life, if she had been in my book, she had fun.
When you see that, when you're watching something, it says based on a true story, right? It doesn't necessarily mean this is exactly what happened. This is not a biography. This is not a documentary. This is we took the idea of something that actually happened and we made it our own.
Based on a true story and a vivid imagination.
and the vivid imagination, again, it could take anything from character development. The cool thing about that show that I was telling you about is, a little bit of spoiler for people, it ends up going into some realm of multiverse. So where there's multiple worlds, where in this particular world, the Nazis won the war, but in the other world, it didn't. And so they get to see a glimpse of themselves. Like, what would I have been like in another world? What, in one world, and this is something I talk about all the time, and I always think back, man, what if I would have made this decision, or what if I would have ended up with this person, or what if I would have bought this car, or whatever it is, right? And I heard Gary Vee one time talking about, if you dwell on those things, you never know. You could have went in that direction and it could have been the best choice financially that you've ever made. And you're super successful and you're traveling the world and you're on your way to go give a big speech in a country and your plane crashes and you die at 28, right? Like that could be a life that happens to you, right? So, having these alternate stories and having these fictions of what woulda, shoulda, coulda, for a reality could be detrimental, but for you, right, this is like gems. These are diamonds that you get to turn into somebody's. You get to expand on them.
The fun thing about it is, if you're familiar with history, then you can just take it and use that basically as your sketch pad and put anything you want on it. Because if it's a dystopia, which my book is, a couple of my books are dystopias. This one is not. It's based on fiction. I mean, on fact, but you do have a lot of room. You do what?
I like that, faction.
Yes, faction. Yeah, this is faction incomplete. Yes, so, but it was a lot of fun writing it. I got to tell you, the hardest part was writing the book, turning it in, and they have this process where they have other people read it when you're finished, but they want the book to go down guidelines that make it cinematic. Now, writing a book that's cinematic and writing a book that really no one ever thought about writing in the direction of a book is really quite different. And there were they sent it back 4 times. I'm going to be real honest with you. 4 times I had to go back and make changes. And when they would recommend that I make the changes, they weren't specific necessarily in the changes. They said, but we kind of would like to see this sort of thing going on. And maybe if the character sounded more like this, and we don't like the way you treated that character. So now I got to go back and figure out, suck my thumb, what's he talking about, And, but I've got to tell you, it certainly increased my writing skills. It did make the book better. And looking back on it, I felt fortunate to be able to do it.
I mean, these characters are like your babies, right? So like when you get feedback like that, where like I don't like what you did to this person, do you
She
get
wouldn't do
a
that.
little,
Are you out of your freaking mind?
right? You get kind of offended, don't you? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, come on, I
Yeah.
gave this character life.
Well, how about this? Didn't you read back on page so and so when this happened? So this makes sense here. That's the worst one. When someone will be writing, they said, "Well, I don't understand why that happened." Well, in the previous chapter, that's why. But if this person is the editor and they're reading, that means maybe I didn't write that scene strong enough to have the impact to hit later.
So what do they mean by what do you mean by they needed more cinematic? Is this like where you need more description of where they are, the scene, the setting, the smells, the colors? Like what is that what they're trying to get across when they're telling you? Because I feel like when you're telling you that you got feedback but it wasn't clear, it's kind of like my spouse saying you should have known this by now, right? Like I told you that. No, you didn't actually say it, but you know me at this point. Like you should have known that this is the way it's supposed to go.
I had no idea what they were talking about.
Exactly my point.
So
That's about right.
I took what they wrote. I'm going to show you this. So funny. These are the 4 different things that came back to me. 4 different readers came back with their comments. One after I wrote it, sent it back, fixed it, then another one. Okay. And so these are 10 pages long with comments, each of them, right? So I've got to go back there and study it. So the first one, they rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, and you have to have an 8 overall, or you don't get published. So the first one that I did, which came out in April, I had a score of, let me go here. I had a score, no, it was in March. I had a score of a 5.5. In April, I had a 6.9.
Improvement.
And listen to this. In May, I got a 4.9. So it went.
Ouch.
And then last one, I got an 8.0. Wow. You know.
And these are averaged over the readers that they get sent to, right?
No, one person reads it and makes it back. So 4 different people scored it differently. And but gotta remember, each time someone new read it, it had been new and improved. So the third one that had been new and improved twice flunked the first one.
What a process, though. I mean, and then here's the thing, right? So you're ghostwriting for a film. So you're creating all this character depth, all this cinematography, right? Everything that's involved in a book. A book is always better than the movie. If you read a book, it's always better. It's got more detail. Plus, your imagination can take it in a place that cinema is limited, right? Yeah. However, you go through all this process, get it ghostwritten. In other words, they're going to come and chop it up, finally get it approved, and then it's going to turn into a film, and they're going to edit all that stuff out.
I might not recognize it, but I got to tell you, there's some cool things in there. I had to do 4 different nightmares. Now, this takes place in 1914, but the nightmares take place during the Civil War.
So you're actually set in 2 time frames.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't have to do that, but it was a lot of fun developing the characters. And I love to do dialogue, and I love the exchange of dialogue. And fortunately, in a book like this, you're asking about cinematic, there has to be about, like 70% of it has to be dialogue. And so I enjoyed that a lot, putting the dialogue in, because the dialogue really does drive the story. You can't have a whole lot of narrative, because unless you've got a silent film, I guess. I don't know. But, it was interesting doing the dialogue, and I am excited to see how the story goes as a book, and maybe it'll be a movie. But again, they're investing in these books to make movies out of them.
So you wrote based on an outline, and you've written based on nothing. Which one of those experiences is easier for you, or which one's a little bit better? What kind of advice you give to writers? Because having a blank canvas can be completely intimidating, even though you have the freedom and flexibility to put whatever you want on it. Sometimes you look at it and you stare at it and you keep looking at it and you flip it around and nothing comes out. Whereas when you have that outline, at least you have a starting point.
Yes, that's a good point. I think you might recall when we spoke last time, when I wrote my previous manuscripts, I had an idea in my head what I want to do, and I would just run with it and do it. And I didn't outline it at all. Now in this one, it's outlined for me, and I followed along with it. And I found putting the bones together of the book and the characters, what have you, was easier than creating my own. But the problem was they weren't characters that I had developed. These were I had developed. These were characters that were specific to the project. So I had to create these characters running along the lines of the story. So I had to be a little bit limited in what I was doing, but at the same time, very creative and make sure what I think the people who wrote these specifications wanted. So in that case, I almost felt like I was contained. I had borders, or in my own books, they don't have to have borders. So that can be good and be bad, because in my own books, I spent much more time writing the books than I did writing this one, not on the initial draft, but on having to organize my own better. This one was organized better from the beginning, but it took a lot of time meeting their expectations. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I mean, it's all the back and forth. Well, I
wonder,
you're talking
about these things right here. I probably put in 30 to 40 hours just making corrections each time they came back.
True. Well, and the reason why I was asking about the outline is because, I've seen a lot of criticism or parallels, if you will, from books like Harry Potter to Star Wars, where those storylines run very similar to each other. Those characters run very similar to each other. And I wonder if it's more of not so much of a copy thing, but of like having those nuts and bolts already built in. There's a foundation between this type of character and this hero's journey and this storyline. Yeah, it's a template. Exactly. Right. And having those templates in place makes it easier for story writing.
Yes. It's more efficient. You're not going to get a Pulitzer Prize out of any of it, that's for sure. But
she sold a hell of a lot of books.
Yes, that's true. So it's been an interesting process for me, and because of the demands that they had and the guidance they gave me, I believe I'm a better writer as a result.
Yeah. Well, I think anytime you can take criticism, when somebody's telling you, yeah, it was good, but fix this, and this, right, and you don't give up, right, and you go back and you take some introspective look in what you're doing, that is the key to
it's
learning,
about
right?
Attitude. Okay. When I would get them back and I'd read what they had to say, the first one, I think there was a temper tantrum and a half a bottle of vodka involved. And then the second, third ones go back, you get used to, you realize, okay, these people are getting paid to get feedback and everybody's working as a team to make this happen. Now, I never expressed any dissatisfaction with the folks that I was working with. I think I was more dissatisfied with myself. Why couldn't I have done a better job the first time? But again, you asked about cinematic. I had never written a book that was geared towards cinematic, so I wasn't really aware of what they were looking for. I am now.
But they came out, they sought you, right? They went out and looked for you. So obviously what you have done in the past caught their attention. They're like, okay, this is the kind of author that we want to work with.
Yeah,
this
we're talking about another project now.
Say that again?
We're talking about doing another project now.
Yeah, see, nice. So they like your style, and I think that's where as an author it's one thing, as a director it's another, and I think when you take some book and you can take the foundation that book has, the characters that it has, and kind of decide, okay, these are the core pieces of this author that we want to put onto a screen. And I think it takes a good mesh. So when you find a great author, when you find a great director, and they really can take that literature and bring it to life in their own ways, I think that's where you have, great cinematic success. That's where you have great success in the book sales. And being a process, I mean, that's no joke, man. I mean, some of these movies take years to put together, and books the same way, and they turn into huge novels. I mean, look at Star Wars. They were at 9 movies already, whatever, but it was originally that 3-volume saga. And like you were saying before, you were writing one book turned into a saga. Like that's just sometimes the characters take you in those directions.
Another interesting point here, back you were talking about the direction, what have you, like this was a ghostwriting situation where someone hires you. Even your major authors that are publishers, they work for the publishers as well. Even though they're major authors, publishers send stuff back that their editors have looked at all the time for a lot of these well-named writers. So, you're going to have, if you're out there, you're successful and you're doing things, it's collaborative effort, and nobody does it by themselves.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But again, having that positive perspective, having that perspective of, what you said when you came back to you literally were like, what did I do wrong? How did I make this mistake? How can I improve? That's a perspective that not a lot of people have. A lot of people are always blaming somebody else or looking in the other direction. Yeah. And I think that's what stops them. It's their own limiting beliefs. They're not willing to look at themselves as the problem. Otherwise, if they did, they would realize that they also have the solution.
Right. Well, you have to respect the people you're working with. And the more I work with those people, the more I interact with them, the more I said, wow, I'm lucky to be working with these people, because I have my own projects going all the time. And all it did was help make my other projects better.
Taking the skills learned in one piece of your life and applying them to the other piece of life.
Right.
I mean, you're a registered investment advisor, right?
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of fact and thought process and creative strategies that you need to put into place in being a registered investment, taking somebody's money and deciding where we're going to put it. How long is it going to be there? How aggressive are we going to be in these investments? How much of it we need to have liquid? All those things are creative points in the strategy that you put together. Not very different from the creative aspect of character development.
Right. That makes sense.
I mean, that's the connection I make. So I can see easily how you can take the skills learned in one and apply them to another.
Now, your banner across there, if I were them, I would go to www.jrstravejr.com too.
J.R. Strayve Jr. Is that a little bit different than Jerry Strayve?
The jrstravey.com is my financial planning, and the J.R. Strayve Jr. is the writing.
Oh, all right. James is going to make that edit here.
What's wrong, huh?
Yeah. Well, it makes a difference. So, hey, James, do me a favor while you're fixing that, James, while you're changing the website, also bring it up so we can show pictures of the books that that Jerry has completed here.
One of them I just put up yesterday. It's a short story. I wrote this short story because someone wanted me to, a group of people wanted me to participate in an anthology, when a bunch of authors get together and everybody piles a story and what have you. And they gave me guidelines on what to write on it. And I got the guidelines and I just ignored them. It was supposed to be a 4,000 word story. I wrote 6,000, so I couldn't put it in there. So I said, the heck with it. And I decided I'm not going to put it in there. So it's the one on the right that says the Lieutenant in the Vintner, which takes place in World War II. And it's this German officer who got injured in battle. He's an SS guy, and he gets injured, and his father's a high-ranking SS general, and Hitler tells them, don't send him back to the front line, give him an easier job. So he goes to Burgundy, France, and he's part of the occupation there. And it's a really kind of cool story, but it's only for an adult read.
I would say the same thing about The First Spouse of the United States. It's definitely an adult read, but it's interesting. It keeps the story going. You weren't afraid to curse. You weren't afraid to have blood. You weren't afraid to step it up or do any of the things that you would even say is stereotypical or divisive. Everything in your books is they speak the way people speak. Right. Yeah. They act the way people act. They feel the way people feel. Right. It's not propped up or anything like that. It's not, it doesn't feel fake when you're reading it. It feels real. Like this is an experience that you would have with somebody else.
By the way, that short story, The Lieutenant and the Vintners, 99 cents.
Boom, on Kindle. Well, Jerry, man, I had a lot of fun. I always have fun when I talk to you, and thank you for jumping on our last minute email list here. So just to let the audience know, I had actually closed off this week. I was supposed to go to Podcast Movement in Dallas for the week, and COVID hit, so that didn't happen. So Yeah, it's all right. So we opened up the calendar, and if you're part of the Business Bros Network, if you're part of our last minute email list, you get the emails that come out and give you an opportunity to come on and talk about what's going on in your life. And Jerry took advantage of it.
What you guys got going on. In fact, I tell people about you all the time, and I got all kinds of people who'd be interested in strutting their stuff on your show.
Well, we'd love to have them. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Make sure you guys check out Jerry's website. It's jrstrayve.com. And pick up some of those books, some interesting reads, have some fun. Check out how California wins. How the Republicans win California in 2020. Just throw it out there.
Read the book or find out what happens there.
You got to find out how it happens. Exactly.
Can't spoil that though.
Nope, not spoiling that. Not spoiling.
I'm working on a sequel for that.
Yeah, you should, because once you win the election and you're in the particular situation that this book is set in, there's all kinds of stuff that can happen after that for sure.
In fact, I had someone who finished that book got so mad at me they tore out the last page the way it ended.
Wow.
Well, you know what? They read the entire book, so that's good. That's good. Yeah. That means they liked it. It's not supposed to end this
way. Wow. All right.
Jerry, thank you very much for spending some time with us. Ladies and gents, hope you guys enjoyed the show. As always, tomorrow, by the way, is SHIT. So happy it's Thursday. We'll catch you again tomorrow. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
And we're out.
Thank you for listening to the Business Bros Podcast. Are you looking to get more clients or to increase your income? Hernan, the business bro, can help you generate referrals through the power of podcasting. And James, the insurance bro with Pipeline Insurance, can help you effectively add insurance to your existing business. If you are ready to create wealth today and generational wealth for tomorrow, email businessbros@csfirst.com to schedule a free consultation or join the Business Bros Network, www.businessbros.biz.